Welcome to the R2RB podcast series, where we dive deep with indie music artists from around the world to discover the stories behind their career. I'm Deb Lamata, your host, and this show is all about the indie artist's journey, their influences, creative process, and the experiences that shape their music. Each episode will get to know these talented musicians on a personal level while highlighting their incredible music they're creating. So grab your headphones, get comfortable, and let's explore the world of independent music together on the R2RB podcast series. Hi, and welcome to the R2RB Indie Artist Podcast Series. Today, I have Bruce Neilsen of the Immaculate Crows with me. The Immaculate Crows was originally an Australian Brisbane-based alternative band formed by Bruce in late 1981, which disbanded in May of 1985. Bruce ceased performing and writing songs apart from trying to start a new band in 2004. The band never got off the ground, but it inspired Bruce to write a lot of new songs at the time. In 2020, the Immaculate Crows became a collective musician performing on recordings of songs written and arranged by Bruce and produced by Carolyn Neilson. The current members consist of Nikki Steele on vocals, Daphne May vocals, Jessica Shipley vocals, Jesse Carmona saxophone, flute, and clarinet, Sam Ryan trumpet, Abraham violin, and Colleen South piano, accordion, and ukulele. Bruce plays acoustic and electric guitars and harmonica. Carolyn does all production, mixing, recording, and programming drum, keys, track. Mastering is done by Waves Audio AI. Thank you, Bruce, for joining me. How are you? That was a lot.
I know. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I wanted to make sure that we got everybody in there. So how's your day? You are in Australia, and just before we got started, your day is done, and I'm just starting mine.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's how it goes. I like to ask two questions to get us warmed up. If you could have one superpower, which one would you want and why?
That's a really hard one. Superpower. The power to make people overlook their differences so they can have rational discourse without resorting to violence. Yeah, the power to bring about world peace.
I like that. We need that. Where is one place in the world you would like to visit?
Costa Rica.
Okay. Any particular reason?
Yeah, because they seem to be one of the more peaceful Central American countries, and as well as there's still a lot of rainforest left. And I'm interested in spiders and ants and nice resorts as well.
I like it.
And cocktails.
I have to keep that in mind.
Okay.
All right. So when you're not doing music, which I'm pretty sure you do music 24/7, what do you like to do?
Well, music is still part of my relaxing routine, and that's basically listening to Spotify. I spend probably a couple of solid hours every day doing that, compiling my playlists. I have a lot of fun doing that. I've got an enormous amount of playlists, and it just keeps on getting bigger. Apart from that, I like soccer. I'm a soccer fan, or football, as the real purist would say. I used to coach it for a few years, and I've never sort of got it out of my system. I just love watching the game, particularly watch Australian game, A-League, and the Women's League as well. And at the moment, there's a really big competition on, which is killing me because there's so many games. The FIFA World Club Cup, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just hard to keep up with. Because I don't have mini games. You could just either watch the full thing or bus sort of thing.
Once upon a time, I did gardening as well, but not anymore. So, Immaculate Crows, what's the story behind the name?
It's a long time ago when I came up with that name, so it's a bit hard to remember. No one could come up with a better name, and odd reason I came up with that one, and they seemed to like it. To me, it's like a juxtaposition of two different words that mean different things. When you think of crows, they're fairly intelligent birds, but they're sinister at the same time. Yeah. They've got a pretty bad reputation amongst farmers.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's deserved or not, but they're not very well liked by farmers, and they're very intelligent creatures. I have seen them doing some pretty awesome things. But I've also seen the other side of them too, when they attack weak animals, which is not very nice. But nature's pretty cruel. And Immaculate implies to me perfection, which we were anything but when we first started off. It was just very raw. Most of us hadn't even played in bands when we got together, and I had no songs at all, and I didn't have a habit of copying other people's songs. It took a while for us to get our act together, and eventually some people came up with some cover songs. We started on those, some of the simpler ones, and yeah, eventually we got together. Then I found that I could write songs and seemed to be doing a fairly good job of it, so I took over as far as the songwriting went, and I continued to do that in other bands that followed after the Immaculate Crows.
I knew there was a story behind the name.
It probably is more of a story than that, but I just can't remember it now. At the time, strange as it turned out, because I wasn't really familiar with the band scene at all in Brisbane at that stage. I was just concerned with getting a band together, but once we got into the band scene, started playing with other bands, etc., there was a lot of really weird names happening at the time. There was Ducks in Formation, who used to practice in the same place where we practice, and they're actually a fairly decent band. Then there was another band I didn't get to see playing at the time. I think they were called Aquatic Pigeons from memory. Then there was the Furious Turtles, Garden Gnomes. They're still going today, Toxic Garden Gnomes. Pineapples from the Dawn of Time, I think.
That's crazy.
Yeah, we had a few awesome names.
I like those. Yeah, absolutely. Right up there with Immaculate Crows. So
Yeah, that's right.
how did you get started in music? What grabbed you?
I was a bit of a nerd, actually. I was a severe asthmatic. I didn't play. My attempts at playing sport were pretty dismal, so I stopped even trying very early in the piece. And I had a harmonica, so I used to play that a lot. And then eventually I started writing poetry. And then my older brother started, when the Beatles came out, of course, and everyone went crazy over the Beatles, including me. And then my brother started introducing me to more sophisticated music. Not saying the Beatles weren't sophisticated, but people like Dylan and Butterfield Blues Band, a few other people. My brother was always turning me on to different music, which was good. He was a bit of an influence as far as that went. Then I got to the stage where poetry just wasn't enough, and I started to get really bored with it. And I started thinking, Dylan he's doing poetry, but it's musical poetry. It's more exciting. And yeah, so I just lost interest in poetry altogether and thought, no, music's the way to go. So then I got a guitar, pretty arrogant. I thought I'd be able to knock it over very quickly, but it was actually a bit of a struggle at first. So my father paid for classical guitar lessons, which were good because they gave me a good foundation in, you get a lot of dexterity with your fingers when you're learning classical guitar. But I heard a guy, when I used to go to my lessons, I heard a guy over the road playing electric guitar, and it distracted me quite a bit. So I went and saw him once, and I thought, no, as much as I like classical guitar, electric's the way to go. So I convinced my father to buy me an electric guitar, and there you go.
I like that. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Dad even made me my first amplifier.
Did you really? How cool.
Yeah.
Oh my God. You just never know. You start out on one path and somebody crosses it and it turns the whole thing around.
That's right. Exactly.
Right. The Immaculate Crows was first formed in 1981. What was the initial vision for the band, if there was one, and how has that evolved over the years?
I think initially there was no vision other than let's get a band together. I wanted to get a band together, and I met a friend through a mutual friend he became the drummer. Then I think we advertised and got another guitarist who also wrote songs. And then we got a bass player who was the most experienced one of us. He'd been in a band and he was also a very awesome player. But then I think I convinced a flatmate of mine to be the singer. And yeah, that's how we started off anyways. And we were very terrible when we first started off. But competency eventually settled in. And then I found I could write songs, and actually the other songwriter, guitarist in the band, I think was a bit intimidated by me. He dropped out, even though he potentially was a good songwriter. I had no problem with him at all. I think I was just becoming to dominate the songs too much.
And so you write the lyrics. Do you also do the music for it?
I do everything.
Do it all. And was that something you did from the beginning? Let me just ask a question about your poetry. How did you get started with the poetry writing?
I think it's because I identified I was a very lonely, neurotic person when I was young. It took me a long time to get over my hang-ups and whatever else. And one way of working through them, I think initially was writing poetry. There was a lot of it was very personal and whatever else. But it was a good way to exercise the demons.
Yeah.
And then I started reading. My brother turned me on to the beat poets like Pearl and Getty, and who else was there? I'm trying to remember their names now. There was a couple of them anyways. Pearl and Getty was the one I remember.
Right.
There's a couple others, and Percy Shelley was another one I used to read a fair bit of at the time.
Wow.
I just identified with tragic people at that stage. I used to read about posers and the miserable lives. And then artists Van Gogh. It just reinforced my depression, basically.
But you're not the first person to talk about using poetry and writing lyrics more as a form of getting feelings. Yes, therapy, absolutely. Yeah. Then you take your writing, your poetry to lyrics and to songwriting. You have all that material to fall back on to write your songs, which we'll get into a little bit later. Can you describe the indie scene in Australia when you first started, and how did the Immaculate Crows navigate that landscape?
Yeah, we had a fairly thriving scene in Brisbane, actually. There was a guy actually, one of the practice rooms we were at, there's a guy called Ivan, this big guy that used to rent it out to us and came and listened to us a few times, and eventually started up his own venue. So we got a lot of work through him. And then there was Triple Z, that's our community radio station. We were pretty popular with them for a period of time. We actually had 2 songs recorded, and this is when we had our second singer, who was a bit of a star, actually. His name was David Page. He was Indigenous, and he'd been a child star in his very early teens, when he was about 13 or something like that, before his voice broke. And he was the first Australian to get a contract with Atlantic Records. So,
wow.
So we were working with a very famous person.
Well, yeah.
And he'd gone through a great lull in his life. I think his parents had paid for him to go to some sort of musical college or something, or he was learning saxophone. I never heard him play sax, but I suppose he was learning sax. And then I think he had some lull in his life. After his voice broke, basically, no one wanted to know him, so he was just dumped.
Yeah.
No longer had the young teenage thing that people thought was cute at a particular time.
Yeah.
So it just dropped, I think, and he started playing in punk bands. He was in a punk band before he joined us. Not that we were a punk band, we played different types of music, but he joined us, and he was a very welcome addition. Hamish just wouldn't have a break. He was our first singer. Dave came in and filled that void, and we were getting lots of work with, as I said, with community station Triple Z, and we managed to record 2 songs, which I unfortunately didn't release at the time because they were being played very heavily on Triple Z.
Okay.
I don't know for how long, but they seem to get played for, I don't know, months and months. You hear them every single day.
Wow.
And we were the darlings at Triple Z for a brief period of time. And there was even talk that we'd be supporting really big bands. I suppose you're familiar with Midnight Oil. You would have heard of them before.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a talk of supporting big bands like that. And then our drummer had a hissy fit and walked out on us. And then our desperation to just keep things going. None of it's faulty because none of us really, we didn't try out enough drummers. So we picked who we thought was the best of the crop. And he ended up being absolutely diabolically terrible.
Oh, no.
He was so terrible because the music we were doing was it wasn't just one thing. There was different bags going on, and there was a bit of sophistication of some of the songs and a bit of delicacy and a melody. And this guy could only play one way, which was loud and heavy, and it was horrible to listen to. So I couldn't take it anymore, and I had a hissy fit. And I was stupid. I was like a pseudo leader in the group. I didn't show leadership. I should have got them together and said, this guy's a problem. We've got to get someone else. But I didn't. Besides that, he was pretty intimidating. He's pretty aggressive at times. One day he came in the practice room. He'd had an argument with his girlfriend. You could hear him slamming the door outside when she dropped him off. And he got one of his cymbals. He tossed it across the room like a ninja knife or something and almost decapitated one of them. Hamish was a singer at that stage, and Hamish suggested that we sat down and had a talk about what we didn't like about each other. And I thought,
that was good.
I'm not going to have people, although I had a pretty high opinion of myself, I wasn't going to have anyone criticise me in any shape or form. So, no, that's it, I'm walking out. So I walked out and left them with him, and they dumped him pretty quick. They started up their own little band, but they didn't want him to be part of it, obviously. And I started up another band, and then eventually we got back together again, and then we disbanded.
That's some story. So that's part of your early challenges. What are some of the triumphs that shaped the band's identity and the sound in those formative years?
Triumph is one that only a couple of things really to talk about. That was the songs I mentioned to you that were very heavily played. That was something to be proud of, because not every day you get played to death by a radio station that really backs you up.
Right.
Nowadays, I don't think anyone even know who I am, but back then we were the darlings of Triple Z for a period of time. And the other thing was the third band we got into, they were called The Pope. And don't ask me why I call them The Popes, but I call them The Pope. And I wrote most of the songs. The singer did have one excellent song, and he wrote another one that wasn't so good, but we had 15 songs altogether, and all original songs. Then we were offered, actually we technically had broken up before we even played anyway, because what happened is that the bass player from the Immaculate Crows came to me and asked to join the band. And he was, as I said before, an absolutely brilliant player. And whereas singer in The Pope was only impressed by people's looks. He was a very, very superficial person, and not a great singer either. But he's a bit of a sex symbol. The girls liked him.
There you go.
And then there was just 2 other guys, the bass player and the drummer. I had to teach the bass player technically had to show him what to play every single song.
Really?
It was getting a bit much. Brad was a brilliant player, so I wanted Brad as soon as he said he was interested. And I mentioned it to the singer, and the singer, no, I don't like the way he looked. So we had that bit of a difference, and then we were offered a gig at the biggest venue venue in Brisbane at the time called Festival Hall. Festival Hall, where all the big overseas acts would go to play. And I saw quite a lot of people there before they eventually got rid of it. And as soon as we heard Festival Hall, I thought despite our differences, the fact that I just didn't like each other anymore, I wanted to play at Festival Hall before we broke up. What was really annoying, I think that brought about the breakup more than prospect of Brad joining or not joining, was the singer didn't have any confidence. I knew we were good. If I'm confident in something, I know it's right. And he was going about, I don't think we're ready, and oh God, I could have strangled him. And anyways, we went ahead. We only had our 15 songs. So it was basically all these very young girls doing their end of year celebration or something or other. There was literally thousands of young schoolgirls there. And a DJ. And that's all it was. We did our set, and one song, we mucked up the beginning of it. So I was playing at one tempo and the bass player was playing at another tempo, and the singer had enough craftiness to
work with it.
Yeah, he had something going for him. Anyways, we had to stop because we couldn't continue because they were going different directions. So we stopped, and the singer made it as though it was deliberate because we weren't playing fast enough. And then we had to start again, and we had to play faster to fit in with the singer's narrative. And we managed to get it together.
There you go.
So we got it together. And I taped that recording, the concert, on the tape cassette, and the sound was absolutely terrible. I'm talking about the tape cassette recording. Funnily enough, there was girls actually screaming during a couple of songs. It was like a mini Beatles concert.
I was thinking the same thing.
We did our 15-song set, then we had a break, and then it was still a bit of a night to go, and they wanted us to play again. I think they wanted us to play again. Well, there was nothing else there, apart from the DJ. He'd done his stint. With us back on again, we just did the same 15 songs again and got away with it something. Yeah, so I was pretty proud of playing at the Festival Halls. I won't forget that, Nari, where a lot of our heroes have played.
Oh my God, and all the screaming girls. That's a great story. Oh my gosh. As a musician who you've started out performing in the 80s, how have you adapted to the changing music industry and particularly the rise of digital platforms and streaming?
We had to adapt to that one pretty quickly. So it was 2019. I finally decided I'll try and get out what was left of the 80s recording. So they were on old technology, what we used to call reel-to-reel tape. And it took me a while to find an engineer who was familiar with that technology, try and convert them to digital. Unfortunately, I'd let it slide so long that the master tapes, in many cases, were pretty shot.
Oh, wow.
There was only one song or four songs that had retained its potency. It was fine. But the other three, one song was lost. It was lost completely. I don't know what happened to it, because I put them on cassette tapes and then I must tape something over it or something or other. So I ended up using cassette tape recording, three of them. The other one we got from the engineer, converting one to digital. So I put out the old 80s one first off, and then once I got them out there, it got me stirred up to start doing something again. I really hadn't been writing anything since 2004 when I tried to get a band together. And that's a story for another day, because that was a diabolical story. And just one hapless thing happened after another.
Wow.
But the good thing about it was I was invigorated me to write again, and I wrote a lot of songs back then, and I feel them about coming out now. What happened about sometime in 2020, or might have been even 2019, I got in touch. Well, I started looking up some of the old band members to see if any of them were still kicking out there, because I'd lost all their phone numbers and whatever. Then I found Mark Hocknell. He was actually, his phone number and everything was on the internet.
Was it?
And he was looked like he was a very successful businessman, but he also mentioned that he was doing recordings. And I looked at the picture, I said, yeah, that has to be him. And so I gave him a ring, and sure enough, he answered, and eventually got together. And Mark said, well, I've been recording instrumentals using GarageBand, which you might have heard of before. Yeah. And he said, I'll tell you what, I'll bring over my equipment and I'll show you how easy it is. So Mark came over, and it was a very simple setup. He had an iPad with his workstation on it, GarageBand, and he brought his guitar over and bass. And that was basically it. And then what he called an iRig, which connects to the iPad. You can only play one thing at a time. So what we started doing was we'd have get-togethers, and he would start off getting the drum, know how many beats per minute it was. I'd strum something. He'd get the beats down, do a drum track, and we'd just break the song down into all these different components. I'd tell him how many bars of what chord progressions I want, etc.
Wow.
Then we'd take turns playing rhythm guitar and bass and whatever. And he'd always do the drum tracks, because I wasn't familiar with digital workstations sessions whatsoever. It was going really well. We started getting a lot of songs down. They're all my songs, but he was happy just to produce them and get credit as a producer.
Sure.
But then the problem was we couldn't record anyone. We couldn't get vocals. So we were recording a whole lot of tracks that we couldn't get anyone to sing on because GarageBand setup would not allow for vocal recording. So that's when Carolyn got dragged into it all, screaming and kicking.
All the way.
That's right. We invested in home studio, and then the problem was Carolyn had to learn how to use it. Not me, Carolyn, because she's the brains of the family. Pretty frustrating at first, but Carolyn's pretty smart, and she began to pick up all the basics fairly quickly. Once she got some basic knowledge, then I started advertising, or not advertising, I basically looked on Brisbane wanted Facebook sites and could see people that were advertising to do vocals for whatever reason, and that's how I began to get some people over. Once we got the vocals down, Carolyn recorded the vocals, and sometimes she'd also record extra parts I'd do here as well, guitar parts, whatever. Once we got the vocals down and any extras, then Mark would send all the initial tracks over and Carolyn would merge the two, and then she'd do the final mix. And then we found the guy to do the mastering, and that continued for 15 songs, and then Mark had a bit of a meltdown one day, and he walked out as well.
Oh, no.
And yeah, he felt like he wanted to do something more, be more involved. I already felt he was doing sufficient. I've got very strong ideas about my music, and I don't like it being... Sometimes I do have a bit of leeway and let people introduce a few little things here and there, but not too much. For whatever reason, Mark decided to go back to doing his instrumental stuff, and he's doing masses of that. I think he's got about 4 albums out there of just instrumental guitar stuff. When Mark left, it put a real spanner in the work. It was just another hurdle to get over. Then there was a matter of we don't have anyone doing drum tracks for us anymore, which was the main thing he brought to the table.
There you go.
He'd been using his technology for a long time, so he was really au fait with it, whereas Carolyn was learning from scratch. Right. We invested in a bit of music software, and Carolyn started getting the hang of that pretty quickly, and the drum tracks started coming together really well. And then we started getting key tracks and bass tracks as well, because the technology is just so good now, you can get pretty good bass tracks without having to play bass as well. Carolyn just took over that whole side of things that she'd been sharing with Mark up to that point. It's been going like that. So the second album, it had the last 4 tracks I did with Mark, and the rest were all ones we produced ourselves, apart from the mastering. We're still getting a guy to do the mastering, but it came to a point around after the second album where we couldn't afford to pay someone for mastering anymore. I don't know how much we were paying, but I think it was somewhere in the vicinity of $250 to $300 or something like that. I know you brought up the subject of artificial intelligence, we'll come to later, but it came up. I saw it with my music aggregator. I saw them advertising. It said free artificial intelligence mastering. So I thought free appealed to me. Me too. Nothing to lose. Let's give it a go.
That's
it. Then okay, so we had to go free one. Carolyn found it. Took a while to get the hang of it, but once she did, it was quite easy for her to use. We bit the bullet and paid for a master, which was really dirt cheap, to be honest. I don't know how much it was, say about $18 or something like that compared to $250 or $300. Yeah. And there was no difference. The product was just as good as what this guy had been sending us from overseas. I thought, why are we killing ourselves financially? The technology's there. Let's take advantage of it. We've been using it ever since. We've used 2 different companies. There's a few doing it out there. So that's the way it's gone. So we're getting pretty close to the end of our 3rd LP now. Just got one other song to put out, and then
Oh, awesome.
Then we'll go and look at what we've got and put in some sort of coherent order and get it out as an album.
That's great. Oh, I'm looking forward to that. I want to ask you about your songwriting and your poetry. I already know a little bit about the backgrounds of your songs. So what has inspired you for your lyrics, for your songwriting?
It varies, Deborah. I don't have any one fixed approach. I don't believe songwriting should work to a formula. I try to be flexible. So sometimes it will be a story inspires me to write. Dolly, that you're familiar with, that was about a youth suicide. There's no one you might have heard called For Hannah. That was written about a particularly horrific domestic violence instance where a mother and her 3 kids were trapped in a car and set alight by the estranged spouse, who also got severely burnt and ended up dying himself. What other ones are those 2 inspired by tragic stories? And then there's another one's Broken Heart. Broken Heart was just me wanting to write a full-on country song. Yeah, and that one I was happy with too. And Nikki Steele gives it a really good rendition. She's got an amazing voice. But there's different things. Sometimes it's just playing on the guitar. I might get a chord sequence going. I think that's a really nice chord sequence. So I can't lose that. I've got to build something around it now. So the lyrics come secondary to the instrumentation. Sometimes it's the other way around. There's some lyrics there.
Do you have notes all over? Do you use your phone for notes? Do you have sticky notes?
No, I don't use my phone, but I've got notepads where I scribble lyrics down. And when I'm actually getting the songs, that's prior to getting them recorded, I just map out the chord progressions. I break it all down into introductory chord progressions and how long it's going to be and the verses and etc. I just map it all out. And then when I work with Carol, and she's getting the hang of this now that she's not a musician, she knows what chord progressions mean. And so we've got a language happening between us.
Oh, that's cool.
It allows us to work on some sort of level. We have a lot of frustrations, though, when getting songs together.
Yeah,
sometimes Carolyn will come up. Sometimes she'll come up with, no, she'll criticise. She's not going to hang back and she hears something she doesn't like. She'll let you know about it.
Which is good. You want somebody like that in your corner.
Yeah, that's true.
You also touch on social issues with your songs as well. Domestic violence, youth suicide, which we mentioned, bullying, female emancipation, anti-vaxxers, conspiracy theories, what else? Poverty, conformity, cancel culture, and quirky love songs, which I find so great because people don't always want to hear about bad things. And I think you do it in such a way, though, that people are not put off by it. Because I've listened to some of your songs. What made you want to be able to talk about those subjects?
A long time ago in another life, I was trying to be a psychologist. I went to uni and I was hoping to be a psychologist, and eventually I worked out my own issues, and I was interested in social change. I was thinking about either social work or psychology, but psychology there was an emphasis on statistics, the experimental side of it, and that just turned me right off. I was never good at maths, and that was maths, and I hated it. Eventually I just finished my Bachelor of Arts degree and left it at that and got into the public service, and I was still working in an area where I could help people and severe issues, so just made the best use of those skills to work in that area.
And bringing awareness to all those subjects is very important. Thank you for what you do in that respect. Mm-hmm. What message do you want your listeners to take away from your music?
What I like to do is connect with people on an emotional level, not all the time, but when I'm doing some of the heavier songs, I want people to think and feel, and then sometimes I write songs I want people to enjoy, fun songs, and don't take them that seriously. So I like to work at different levels and hope that people will see that side of me, that don't put me or stereotype me as one fixed bag writer. I've got a lot to offer across the spectrum. That could be a problem for a lot of people. A lot of people like to just work in general genres and that's it.
But I also think being an indie artist gives you that ability to do heavy, do light, and cross over your genres as well. That's one of the things that being an indie artist you can do and get away with it.
I think I've alienated quite a few people though over the last year or so, because I had a few people in community radio over in Australia that they thought that I was an alternative artist and I'd always be an alternative artist, and as soon as I started playing around with other genres, it dropped me pretty quickly. But then again, I started finding other people that were open to that.
I get that side too. I know, that some of the stations, some of the programming is one way, one genre, and that's, if it's not their niche, they go on to the next one. But There are so many places now with online radio that will play everything, which is so great, I think, for indie artists. Who's had the most significant influence on your music?
Too many people to name, Deborah. First one would be my brother, because he's the one that, I want you to listen to Jimi Hendrix. Never heard of Jimi Hendrix in my life until my brother turned me on to him. Same thing with Bob Dylan.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So he was a big influence. Even though he wasn't a musician, he turned me on to a lot of music. Dad was, to an extent too. Dad was a frustrated jazz musician.
There you go.
And we had lots of arguments about music, terrible arguments. And then ended up, our common denominator was blues music. We both liked blues music, even though Dad mightn't have liked a lot of the psychedelic stuff, rock and whatever else. And I didn't like a lot of the jazz stuff he listen to either. Blues was a common denominator, so we actually went to a few concerts and saw people, B.B. King and Muddy Waters together, and it was something we could both share and enjoy. And as far as artists go, there's probably Bob Dylan and Beatles as far as songwriters initially, anyway. And as far as musicians, Jimi Hendrix and Paul Butterfield Blues Band, which a lot of people would not remember, but they had they had a lot of very good musicians in that band. They put out one album that was exceptionally good, even by today's standards.
Let's talk a little bit about your wife, Carolyn. Did she know what she was getting into when you two first met up?
She might have got an inkling of it. The way I met Carolyn was at a party, and it was actually when I was in the Immaculate Crows, and we just had our 2 songs out on radio, and I just happened to be carrying a cassette tape of those 2 songs on me. And when I went to this party, Carolyn was sitting in a corner, so she couldn't escape. I came up and introduced myself, gave her a spiel about the Immaculate Crows. I think she might have asked me where she could hear us or something. I said, I just happen to have tape of our recordings on me. So straight away, Carolyn put them on. There was just happened to be a tape cassette recorder there, and she put them on, and she liked it. Okay, so we gelled together pretty quickly, and we stayed together all this time. And she's always been part of the music when the music was happening back then. Then there was a big lull in the music, obviously, but nothing was happening. But since it's come back again, she's certainly a major part of it.
Absolutely.
If it wasn't for Carolyn, there'd be no music happening.
Kudos to her, because she does the mixing, recording, and the programming for the drums and the keys and everything else.
Yep.
That's a lot. That's
it is a lot. We do the mastering too, but I think at this stage we just get a little bit more loudness if we go through the artificial intelligence mastering, because it's got access to algorithms and things that whatever the things that don't have that sophistication to do at the moment. She's certainly heading in that direction, I think.
That's awesome. Knowing what you know now about the indie music industry, would you still want a music career?
That's a hard one to answer, Deborah. If you're insane, you probably say, yes, that's an easy one to answer. Yes, I'm insane. I want to have an indie music career. Yeah. I'm a masochist. It doesn't matter. But honestly, you have to have a pretty thick skin, to be honest. There's a lot of, I don't know, you got to be prepared for setbacks but if you believe in your music, you carry on regardless. That's the way I see it.
Would there be anything different that you would do when you first started?
Yes, I think I just gave up on music too quickly, dropped out too early, and I should have just persisted back in the 80s and carried on for a bit longer than I did, I think.
The important thing is you came back.
I did.
So that was a good thing. And so you do use AI. Usually I'll ask if you use the AI. How do you feel about it overall in the indie music field?
I think it has its uses, but obviously it could also, I think it's been composing whole songs to my knowledge, not just songs, artwork as well. It's becoming pretty pervasive in a lot of areas of life. I don't know. I've got mixed feelings about it, to be honest.
I do too. I think used properly is an amazing tool. And for those that use AI to create music, create the lyrics, the music, and do the whole thing, they're really not an indie artist. What you do, the passion you all have for your music, and the hours that you put in, starting with a feeling, a thought, music, the process, putting it all together, mixing, mastering, and releasing doesn't happen overnight. And so that's where I get a little uppity with the AI. It's like, as long as people are using it the way that it should be intended, I don't have an issue for it. And for a true indie artist, it's kind of like a kick in the pants. So, so that's my take.
Well, you sort of touched on a little while ago, you mentioned someone that would potentially use it to do everything. I think if you're going to do that, and that's probably happening already, and if it isn't, it's going to happen not that far away, then that person should come clean and state that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let people know where the music's coming from.
I agree on that one. And then there isn't an issue. If somebody's up front and it's like, I was able to put in all the pieces into AI, and this is what I came up with. But there's so many people that are sneaking in behind the scenes, and they just want to do something to see if they can make money off of it. And it's that bottom line with the dollars sometimes too.
Another way I came across AI music was I saw a review of one of my songs. It was very well written until it dawned on me it wasn't a person writing, it was actually artificial intelligence. It was pretty scary though. It wasn't all that bad.
But it is scary. And AI, you do have to keep an eye out. You have to read things twice and don't take it for face value, especially on social social media where AI is into everything. When AI first hit the scene almost 2 years ago, I remember talking to my then partner. I said to him, I said, this is going to blow up. This is not going to be something little. AI is going to be, because it has been in the works for a very long time. Somebody just didn't come up with the idea because they've had to feed all the information, and it has blown up. And so with the social media this 2024, I think everybody, especially indie music artists, between Spotify, what they did or what he said, and then having the AI bots on social media, you can't post today. You've posted too much. You posted too many times. You can't post. Now we're going to have you offline. You can't do anything for a month. And if it actually happens,
that's happening to people quite a lot. Like on my band, Facebook bands, mainly other musos, and I see people, and I've copped it myself, where scrolling down my followers this one day because I noticed that some people had dropped off and I was trying to find out who they were so I could unfollow them. And then I got a message saying I was scrolling too fast and I'd been blocked from scrolling for a period of time.
It's crazy. A year
ago. People always complaining that they're being restricted.
Yeah. It's crazy. Even for me, for R2RB, I had shared a post from a band who had just had a release, and their album cover was a bit risque. I didn't think twice about it. Didn't even think about it when I hit the share button. It took me months to be able to fully post on Facebook because of the.
Pretty scary, isn't it?
It was.
When you think of the original idea, Facebook and other social media sites in the first place was to encourage communication and whatever else, and now it seems to be the opposite. Don't communicate too much, otherwise we're going to restrict.
I think Facebook, as they have many times, have screwed up along the way, and I think that was one of them, to let AI loose amongst their algorithms. That was what was happening. So it's not happening as often anymore, at least for me. Every once in a while, if I post too much, I'll get it. But
I'm actually in their good books at the moment.
Oh, good.
They sent me a message saying that because I was posting good content that they're going to help me or something. So, that's a nice change.
Right? It's crazy. You have to be careful and look at what you're reading and posting.
I don't post any political views whatsoever.
Yeah, no. What advice would you give a new indie artist?
Depends on what level they're operating at. If you just want to make music for the fun of it, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. If you think that you've got something more to offer and you're getting good feedback from other people and you like to take it a bit further, then give it a go. Be wary of some of the people you meet along the way, because there are plenty of people that like to scam musicians. Yeah. It's actually such a big level that it's actually, I think Instagram, if you look at categories of scamming, see a distinct one which is about musicians, independent musicians, I think it is.
Yeah.
Because we're so many musicians are so naive and act in good faith and very easily taken advantage of, and the scammers know it.
Crazy world we live in, that is for sure.
I had one that was posing. I think he'd actually carried out identity theft, and he was actually had the image of Pitchfork journalist who apparently was well known. I didn't know the guy at the time. This person was saying he was this person from Pitchfork, so then I looked up this person, lo and behold, he was a famous Pitchfork journalist, but the person who was chatting to me wasn't him.
Yeah, it's crazy. People are they are scamming left and right, so you have to do your due diligence and really vet people that are reaching out to you.
If you're not sure, always go to Trustpilot, one of those review sites. Just do a Google search at the very least. See what you can find out.
Absolutely.
Even then, be wary.
Absolutely. 100%. So what's next for Immaculate Crows?
I think I'll be continuing in the same direction I already am, which is basically probably working within about 3 different genres. So when I'm looking at songs coming up for the next 4th album in the future, somewhere in the distant future, there'll be punk songs, a couple that I did back in the 80s and never got to record, and a couple of new ones as well. And there'll be more alternative country ones, and there will be ones verging on mainstream. When I say verging on mainstream, I don't know how you describe them, to be honest. Like, I've got a couple coming up, next 2 coming up, sort of have vestiges of mainstream. Like the next one coming up, Daphne sings it, and Daphne loves R&B, disco, and big power. And I just happen to have a power ballad sitting there. It didn't dawn on me at the time, but I transformed this song. Originally, I wrote in 2004 it was a jazz ballad I wrote in waltz time.
Okay.
So it would have been a medium tempo mellow jazz love song. When I started getting the tracks down, I transformed it into something else. Now it's lower tempo, but it's very, I don't know, it's a very powerful ballad. And Daphne, she just hit the nail on the head straight away. She did that song. It just came to her so naturally, you know. Very dramatic. I like a bit of drama. And there's another song I had a hell of a time trying to get someone to sing it.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I just couldn't get the right voice for it. And then I actually advertised, and I got a couple of people replied. The very last one I approached, I sent her the tracks without vocals. I did a rough vocal on another one I sent her so she got an idea how the melody went. And she sent me back a reply the next day, and she absolutely loved it. I think she's a young girl named Serena. She's an artist in her own right. Her artist name is Interstellar Neighborhood, I think she calls herself. No, she's a songwriter too and producing her own stuff. But anyway, she loved this song, and I just said, all I want you to do in the song is to sing it. I don't want you to do any production or anything. So she sent me back this rough track, and she told me how much she loved it because it's got Jesse Carmona playing Prono sax on it. He's a guy that's only been in Australia for about a year or so, and he's living permanently here now, and he's a brilliant jazz musician. He plays sax, flute, clarinet, trumpet, whatever.
Wow.
And he played on a couple of songs, and this one's just been sitting there because I couldn't get anyone to sing it until this lady heard it and loved it. And so she did a rough track, and since I heard her on it, that's the voice I've been after. Really deep. She's got a really deep voice.
Oh, nice.
And she did a little bit of creative harmonies as well, which I didn't mind. It was fine. And she sent me back a finished product now, so that one will be ready to roll when I get the new cover art down. Well, I haven't got the cover art for the next batch releases yet, but as soon as I get that down, it'll be the next one coming up. So it's mainstream too, because it's once again a ballad, but it's a little bit of R&B. It's got a lot of synthesizer on it. Then again, you've got a jazz musician playing it as well, so you've got that balance, R&B and jazz.
All right.
I love it.
That is going to be awesome. I can't wait to hear that one. Wow.
It's anything but alternative, so there's going to be more people hating me. But
you lose some, you win some.
That's the way it goes, Deborah.
That is it. So, Bruce, why don't you let everybody know where they can find you?
Yes, I'm on all the streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, SoundCloud, Bandcamp as well, Amazon, Deezer, it just goes on and on. I think you'll find us on every streaming platform. Apart from that, as far as the socials go, it's Instagram and Facebook.
Bruce, this has been great. I really enjoyed our conversation and finding out about the Immaculate Crows and your wife, Carolyn.
Thanks, Deborah.
Thank you so much for being my guest today on the R2RB podcast series.